Benvinguts, benvingudes totes. Tots. Sí, com deia, benvingudes i benvinguts tots, bienvenidos al Instituto Europeo del Mediterráneo, bienvenidas a su casa, una casa de todas y todos aquellos que compartimos una visión, la visión euromediterránea. En primer lugar, querría agradecer a la Embajada de Portugal en España, representada a su más alto nivel por su embajador, João Mireia Gomes, y también a la Cónsul General de Portugal en Barcelona, Ana Coelho, que en el marco de la presidencia rotatoria del Consejo de la Unión Europea han confiado en el Instituto Europeo del Mediterráneo para acoger este acto sobre política marítima integrada, una aproximación atlántica y mediterránea. También querría agradecer a la Comisión Europea, a sus representaciones en Barcelona y Madrid, al Ministerio del Mar del Gobierno de Portugal, a los Ministerios de Exteriores y Agricultura y Pesca de España y, como no, a la Secretaría de la Unión por el Mediterráneo, todos ellos por su implicación y su participación en este acto. En el Instituto Europeo del Mediterráneo llevamos más de 30 años trabajando como think tank especializado en relaciones Euromed, de manera decidida en promover la colaboración y la cooperación entre ambas riberas, tanto a nivel institucional entre gobiernos, como también a nivel, y muy particularmente a nivel de sociedad civil. Llevamos a cabo e impulsamos una visión y una actuación genuinamente euromediterránea, convencidos de que necesitamos atraer, tanto como sea posible, a las instituciones europeas, a la Comisión, al Parlamento, al Consejo, a los Estados miembros y a su ciudadanía, sobre la necesidad de que tengan una mirada mediterránea. Y también a los países del sur y este del Mediterráneo, del interés en tener una visión europea. Y esto lo podemos hacer ya que contamos con el apoyo decidido de 3 niveles de la Administración. La Generalitat de Cataluña en primer lugar, el Ayuntamiento de Barcelona y el Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores, Unión Europea y Cooperación, que por encima de intereses particulares legítimos, que serían legítimos, consideran de una manera muy altruista y muy decidida que es importante contribuir a los principios y valores del proceso de Barcelona para construir un espacio de paz, estabilidad, prosperidad compartida y diálogo entre culturas y civilizaciones entre ambas orillas del Mediterráneo. Acabamos de conmemorar los 25 años del proceso de Barcelona, de Asociación Euromed. Disponemos del paraguas que nos provee la Agenda 2030, también de un fresco marco financiero multianual y de una nueva agenda para el Mediterráneo, donde la economía azul, la economía verde y circular tienen un papel relevante de cara a nuestro presente y a nuestro futuro. Y para hacer frente de manera compartida a los retos comunes a los que nos enfrentamos, que en muchos casos, yo diría en casi todos, se han visto agravados por las consecuencias sanitarias, económicas y sociales de la COVID-19. Es por ello que me parece particularmente relevante capitalizar sobre la experiencia atlántica en el contexto mediterráneo. Muchas gracias. Embajador, tienes la palabra. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias, Josep. Muchas gracias también a IEMed por nos tener aquí esta tarde. Bienvenidos a todos los presentes y también a todos que están asistiendo virtualmente. Allow me first to thank our keynote speakers and experts for joining us here today to commemorate Europe Maritime Day, a date that, due to historical and geographical reasons, means a lot to a seafaring nation such as Portugal. It is also a pleasure for me to celebrate this event in Barcelona, a city so close to the sea and facing the Mediterranean. My country is a staunch defender of multilateralism and, as always, firmly supported a global governance of the oceans based on United Nations Convention Law of the Sea, and is an active voice in global discussion on ocean-related issues. Portugal has a coastline of 2,500 kilometers and a jurisdiction over around half of EU's maritime waters. Its exclusive economic zone is one of the largest in the world, with a great diversity of resources and ecosystems. In effect, the sea represents 97% of Portugal's territory, so I can say that Portugal is much more water than land. This reality places a special responsibility upon my country regarding matters of governance, conservation, sustainability, security, and defense of the ocean. Therefore, over the past decades, Portugal has taken up a number of endeavors to live up to this great responsibility, be it at national, regional, or international level. These include, among many others, our involvement in the Independent World Commission on the Oceans, Portugal's decisive contribution to the inclusion of ODS 14 in the 2030 agenda, and the hosting, together with Kenya, of the second UN Ocean Conference next year in Lisbon, but also the creation of an Atlantic International Research Center aimed at promoting cooperation in research and innovation in the Atlantic Ocean, and the former establishment last Friday of the Atlantic Center, a new entity based in the Azores, which seeks to reinforce peace and stability, namely through dialogue, exchange of information, capacity building, and cooperative security by bringing together countries from all sides of the Atlantic, east, west, north, and south. Recently, Portugal updated its national sea strategy. By the way, I had the pleasure of being the Secretary of State in charge of the sea in 2006, when we approved the first national strategy for the sea. And we will hear more about this later from our representative from the Ministry of the Sea, who I warmly welcome here this afternoon. Portugal's national sea strategy is fully aligned with the EU's vision and strategic objectives, as well as with the United Nations 2030 agenda. Our strategy also represents a good example of a very inclusive process that was open to the entire society and fully transparent. Portugal's Recovery and Resilience Plan, which was the first to be presented to the European Commission, identifies the blue economy as a key motor of recovery, modernization, economic and social development. Therefore, actions in this field cut across almost all of the EU's top priorities, in particular, those related to green transition, digital transformation, intelligent, sustainable and inclusive growth, as well as social and territorial cohesion. Portugal took over from Germany the presidency of the Council of the European Union amidst the most difficult crisis Europe has lived since the Second World War. Under the slogan, "Time to deliver for a fair, green and digital recovery," we have been working together with EU institutions and member states on three main priorities. The first one, promoting an European recovery leveraged by climate and digital transitions. Second, to deliver on the social pillar of the European Union as a key element to ensure a fair and inclusive recovery. And in this respect, we organized in Oporto a very important social summit in the beginning of May. And thirdly, strengthening the strategic autonomy of Europe. These three priorities are being developed through 5 action lines known as Resilient Europe, Green Europe, Digital Europe, Social Europe, and Global Europe. So you might be asking what all this has to do with sea and oceans. And that's what I'm going to try to explain to you right now, and putting also in context, better said, in terms of ocean governance and blue economy and blue growth. The action line, Green Europe, promoting the EU as a leader in climate change, covers actions aimed at the conservation and sustainable use of ocean and sea resources, in line with the European Green Deal. The implementation of the common fisheries policy is another very important dimension, as it aims to ensure that fishing and aquaculture activities are environmentally sustainable in the long term. The Portuguese Presidency has also highlighted the importance of the ultra-peripheral regions in the context of international governance of the oceans, as these regions reinforce EU's maritime dimension and strategic position in the Atlantic, Indian, and the Caribbean. On May 26, the Council, under the initiative of our presidency, will adopt conclusions on sustainable blue economy, building on European Commission communication on the same subject adopted last Monday. And I think we will hear from our colleague of DG Mare will elaborate further on this. I would like also to highlight the convening of the high-level conference on sustainable oceans, which will take place between the 2nd and the 4th of June in the Azores. The All Atlantic R&I for a Sustainable Ocean, All Atlantic 2021 meeting will focus on the development of the blue economy, the EU Integrated Maritime Policy, and the implementation of the Common Fisheries Policy. On the 8th of June, which is the World Ocean Day, Portugal will host a ministerial conference on the EU Integrated Maritime Policy under the theme, A Blue Agenda in the Green Deal. It will focus on the 4 main pillars identified by the Council conclusions on sustainable blue economy, health, knowledge, prosperity, and social equality, which is to say they are fully in line with the UN 2030 goals. As you can see, today's discussion is taking place at a time when many new and important developments are happening. We are meeting here in Barcelona in the framework of the IEMed in my country events 2021, which are taking place all across the European Union today. As an Atlantic, European, and Iberian nation situated at the southern and westernmost point of the continental Europe, Portugal pays the utmost attention to the EU's southern neighborhood, a region that presents both many challenges and opportunities, and that is of enormous importance for the security, stability, and prosperity of the Mediterranean Basin. Portugal is a founder and a driving member of the 5+5 and the Union for the Mediterranean. Therefore, we are grateful to our colleagues from the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, who will explain how Mediterranean entities and networks, such as the 5+5, the WestMed initiative, can contribute to a sustainable blue economy. We are equally thankful to the Deputy Secretary General for Water, Environment and Blue Economy of the UFM for his presence. We look forward to better understanding how the EU and the Union for the Mediterranean can pursue peace, stability, security, and prosperity in the Mediterranean through cooperation and sustainable economy. Before I conclude, I would just mention that the Portuguese Presidency of the Council of the EU is also preparing a UFM meeting, ministerial meeting on energy in Portugal on June 14. It is a great pleasure for me as Portuguese ambassador to Spain and personally as a former Secretary of State for the Sea, who had the responsibility, jointly with the Commission and the Member States, to launch the first EU Integrated Maritime Policy when Portugal had the presidency in 2007. So it is a great pleasure to me to formally open this conference. Thank you for your attention. It is now time to open the floor to the several speakers, and I would like to pass the floor first to our colleague from the European Commission from DG Mare. Isabel Vialon will talk to us about the EU's Integrated Maritime Policy and the Commission's most recent communication on the blue economy, which, as I already mentioned, was adopted last Monday. So, Isabel, please, you have the floor. Vous êtes la bienvenue.
Thank you very much, Mr. the Ambassador. It's a pleasure, and I would like to thank you, all of the Portuguese colleagues, for having organized this conference today. As you mentioned, today is the European Maritime Day, and it's a pleasure to be with you and all the colleagues from the Mediterranean area to discuss about blue economy. So thanks again for both Portugal and the European Institute of the Mediterranean for organizing this discussion today. It's a timely event because, I mean, this week is a busy week for all blue actors in Europe. There is the European Maritime Day, but also on Monday, I mean, the Commission adopted this new communication on sustainable blue economy. And I would like to present it to you because I think it's important also for the Mediterranean context. So I hope I will manage to share my screen with you and that it will work. Let's try. Can you see the screen? Hopefully, yep. Yes. Yeah. So I will start with a short presentation of the communication. But before doing that, I would like to mention a few figures, because I mean the ambassador already mentioned the important EEZ of Portugal, but indeed these are important things to remind to those who are not so familiar with oceans and all sectors. But to start with, I mean, I wanted to remind everybody that I mean the seas and the oceans represent more than 70% of the surface of the globe. So even if very often they are not in the mind of decision makers when they take decision, they should. Because also they host 80% of all forms of life on the earth. And if we are talking about preserving the biodiversity, I mean, we should care for the marine biodiversity. The oceans also capture 1/4 of the carbon emissions that we produce every day. And they have many other roles that they play in terms of food provision and so on. Another figure that is important to mention is this 55,000 kilometers is the EU coastline. It is more than the one of Russia and the US together. I mean, so it's a long coast, and behind the coast, I mean, it's important to remind everybody that the EU, and I mean, the sum of all the EEZ of the member states is the largest in the world. And that's important because the EU is present in all the oceans, I mean, through the different outermost regions that belongs to the member states. So these are important to remind when we talk about the EU policy. We have to think about this as a possible tool for work. Another figure that I think is also important to remind is that 40% of the EU population lives in coastal areas. So when we are talking about economic recovery or social impact of the COVID, we should also remind this, the importance of coastal regions in the EU. And the last figure, I mean, this 1 trillion euro, that's the estimation by OECD of the turnover of the ocean economy by 2030. And it is twice, I mean, they expect a growth that will be twice the current figures. So these are few figures that sometimes is worth to keep in mind where we start discussing about the role and the place of oceans and seas in our policies. Let's move to the discussion on blue economy and what is blue economy. I mean, we usually define the blue economy as all the economic activities related to ocean, coast, and seas. So it's not only activities taking place in the sea, but also on the coastline. The blue economy covers a wide range of interlinked sectors, both established sector like fisheries, maritime transport, and so on, but also emerging ones that are likely to play an increasing role in the future, like the offshore energy, for example. Since the last few years, I mean, the EU is publishing a blue economy report. The last one, in fact, was launched yesterday, so I should update this presentation with the new link. But it's important because it provides, this blue economy report provides a very accurate description of the dynamism behind the blue economy sector in Europe. Just to mention that just the traditional economic sector represents more than 4.5 million direct jobs. Why do we need a new approach on sustainable blue economy, and why did the Commission adopt this new communication on Monday? Well, I think it's important to remind a bit the context. We have the 2030 agenda and the European Green Deal that clearly call for a sustainable transformation of the EU economy. And in a way, the blue economy makes no exceptions. I mean, all sectors shall make efforts to transition to one more sustainable practice. And this applies also to blue economy sectors. But more than that, we consider that the blue economy is part also of the solution, that there won't be, there is, the commissioner or commissioner very often says that there is no green without blue, and that if we want to achieve the ambitious targets of the European Green Deal, we will need also to mobilize the resources, I mean, the solutions that are provided by the oceans. And that's important also, and that's why it deserves due attention when we in the EU policy. Another important element, of course, is the impact of COVID and the need to support recovery in Europe. We know that the blue economy sectors have also been affected by the COVID sector. And this shows also the problems of the resilience of some certain sector. And that's also part of the objective of the communication, is to look for a more sustainable and more resilient value chain in the blue economy. And last element that I think is very important also in the Mediterranean context is that there is a need to joint efforts across the different blue economy sectors. So we have to move from a silo approach where, I mean, each sector of the blue economy is managed by a specific ministry or has its own rules, and we should look at the interactions between the different blue economy sectors. And another element also is that we need to join efforts across the EU, because most of the problems we face at sea are cross-border. I mean, they don't stop at the border between countries. And if we want to address those issues, we need to have coordination among the different coastal regions and coastal states, so that we are able to design the appropriate solutions. So that's all the elements behind the decision for the Commission to prepare this new communication on a sustainable blue economy. So what's the communication about? It's not an action plan. So it's not, it's more than that. I mean, the idea with this communication was to try to identify, I mean, some concrete desirable transformation in different sectors of the blue economy that could serve as a basis for discussion with the stakeholders, with member states, and that could also guide public and private initiative. We know that if we don't mobilize all of us around a common vision, it will be very difficult to change things at sea. So, of course, the Commission identified its own efforts. I mean, and the idea is really to mobilize all the EU policies and all the EU instruments. So this communication is the result of a very collective work that involved not only DG Mare, but also all the different DGs in the Commission, with the idea that we should pull together our instruments in support to this vision. And it goes also without saying that, I mean, this initiative complements already a number of initiatives that have been announced in the last few months under the European Green Deal. But what is the added value of the communication is that it provides an holistic approach, putting the oceans at the center and looking around what are the implications and what are the actions that need to be taken to ensure more sustainability at sea. So what do we mean by sustainable blue economy? I mean, the idea is to combine three elements that are important for us. I mean, first, of course, the environmental sustainability. We need to preserve the natural marine capital. Our commissioner very often says that when we are talking about blue economy, nature is the economy itself, because many blue economy activities, starting with fisheries, depend on the good status of the marine environment. A second very important aspect is, of course, the economic sustainability. I mean, blue economy needs to be profitable, innovative, and resilient to shock. We have seen over the last few months that there are progress to be made on that. And this is also very important to keep in mind. And the last point, of course, the social sustainability is not, I mean, the blue economy not only provides jobs and revenues, but it's more than that. It also provides livelihoods, it provides food, it provides important element for the health of our population. So we can't ignore this social component that is very important. So what the communication proposes is to look at all the different blue economy value chains and to set directions for more sustainability, both in terms of decarbonization, biodiversity and coastal resilience, responsible food system, and circularity. I won't go into the detail because it will be too long, but I think some of them are important to be mentioned. When we talk about decarbonization, of course, it's not only that we need to reduce, for example, emissions from the maritime transports, but we need also to explore the full potential of offshore renewable energy. The Commission adopted a specific strategy on offshore renewable energy a few months ago, with the ambition to increase significantly the production of electricity from renewable marine energy. The idea being that in 2050, a quarter of the EU electricity could come from the sea. What is important to mention is that it goes beyond the traditional wind farm. I mean, the EU is leading the development of wave and tidal energy, for example, but of course we have to move from research and innovation to a sector that is fully competitive with other energy sectors. What is interesting to mention is that already this sector is employing more and more people in Europe. I mean, the employment has increased by 15% between 2017 and 2018, and it could triple by 2030. So that's a sector that will be more and more important, including in the Med, with the development of new forms of marine renewable energy that can adapt to the Mediterranean context. Now, when we turn to biodiversity, I mean, the objective of the Commission and the Member State is to increase the percentage of marine protected area to 30% of our seas, with 10% being fully protected. This is essential if we want to preserve marine biodiversity. And of course, this has implications in many other sectors, such as fisheries, for example. And moving to a responsible food system, I mean, the Commission adopted last week new guidelines for aquaculture, the idea being that we really need to look at sea to produce alternative source of proteins. We know that aquaculture is an important element in that context, but the Commission will also develop by 2022 a new strategy for algae production that is also a very promising sector for the production of feed and food in Europe. Last element on circularity, I mean, of course, we know very well that pollution at sea is not very often comes from the land, and efforts shall be put there, I mean, to reduce, for example, the production of nutrients that arrive to the sea from the rivers. But we need also to make efforts at sea in the blue economy value chains. And the blue economy value chain should lead by example. So, I mean, there are a lot of efforts that are done, for example, to reduce pollution from the fishing gears. But we are also considering revising the EU regulation on the ship recycling, for example, and invest in, for example, the recycling of leisure boats. That is also something that is very promising and should be taken into account in the Mediterranean context, for example. So these are just examples, but you can find much more information in the communication. To ensure this transition, I mean, along those different axes, the communication tries to identify a number of enablers that can contribute to that. Here again, I won't go into the details, but I mean, clearly we need to boost efforts in terms of ocean knowledge. We have already a number of tools at disposal that we can build on, notably, for example, the Copernicus satellite system. I mean, there is an intention to extend the Marine Service to further support knowledge of the oceans. In the same way, the Commission is proposing a new initiative on ocean observation that should be adopted in coming months. At the same time, I mean, it will be essential to continue investing in research and innovation. I mean, here the main tool is, of course, the Horizon Europe fund. And in that context, I mean, we will create a European partnership for climate neutral, sustainable and productive blue economy. We are also considering launching an ocean mission to bring together whole actors in charge of innovation. It will be also important to look at blue skills, because those transformations impact also the needs for qualified workforce. A number of initiatives have been already launched, for example, in the marine renewable sector, but also in the shipbuilding, for example, sector, where, I mean, if we want to build zero emission vessels, I mean, this requires a fundamental change in the way we will operate maritime transport in the future. So this has to be anticipated, and there is a need to join forces between, I mean, the private sector and the education and training centers. Of course, I mean, we need also to mobilize investment, both public and private. I mean, the ambassador mentioned in his introductory speech that Portuguese will make use of the Recovery and Resilience Fund to boost blue economy in Portugal. This is very welcome by the Commission. Indeed, I mean, the recovery package that is now in discussion between the Member State and the Commission offers opportunity to support infrastructure developments in the blue economy sector. We are also working closely with the European Investment Bank to see how we can mobilize private funding in support to SMEs. The EU has set up a Blue Invest platform that is specifically dedicated to support to SMEs, and we will continue to look for innovative financing solutions to support innovation in the blue economy sector. Last, but I think it's important to mention that we need also to care for maritime security. There is no blue economy at sea if there is no secure environment. The threats are many, including now cybersecurity issues. And here again, we need to pool the efforts between the different administrations, Coast Guard, Navy, and so on, but also between the different countries. In the Mediterranean area, we have a dedicated Coast Guard forum, and we hope that despite the COVID, it will be able to restart its discussion, because there are many security challenges that we need to address in the Mediterranean context, for example. Last slide from my side. I mean, this communication is also about changing the way we are operating. As I mentioned, the idea is to break silos and look at the sea with the cross-sectoral approach. Only few countries like Portugal have a minister in charge of the sea, but that's a very important element to ensure coordination. Another important element is the Maritime Special Planning Directive that imposed to all member states to develop maritime special plans. Those plans are important to prevent conflict, to explore synergies between activities, and also reconcile nature conservation and economic development. Member states are all finalizing their maritime special plans. And I think it will be very important that we continue exchanging between member states on those plans, because there are fundamental elements for coordination of activities at sea. At the same time, the Commission in the communication proposed also to create at the level of the EU a blue forum that will bring together all stakeholders from the different sectors of blue economy to discuss about coexistence of activities at sea. We consider that it's important to have innovative thinking about this. We have to stop to move from the first come, first serve approach and look at innovative ways to reconcile activities at sea. I mean, we know very well that the development of marine renewable energy is creating a number of issues with other activities such as fisheries, and it's important that we try to find solutions for the coexistence of those activities at sea. Another important element, as I mentioned, is also the cooperation between coastal countries around us, the same sea basins. We know very well that even if we have common objective at EU level, the situations in the different sea basins are different, the problems are different, and we have to take into account those specificities. So already at the EU level, we have a number of sea basin strategy, one in the Atlantic, one for the West Med, one for the Black Sea. And those sea basin strategy are very important to ensure that we take into account the specificities of the region and that we can address cross-border challenges. So I'm very pleased to see that we will have today our colleagues from the Spanish administration, from West Med, to take the floor and present their views on this cooperation in the Med. I'm sure that also the colleagues from UFM will explain how important it is to have a cooperation with also the southern countries that are not members of the EU, but that share with us the same sea and the same challenges. Last point to be mentioned is ocean literacy. We know that citizens care more and more for the oceans, and that's a good thing, because I mean, citizens are also consumers, and if we want to change the way we are managing our resources, we have also to make sure that the citizens are fully aware of what is the oceans, what are the challenges, and we should encourage their active participation in all these discussions. So that's a bit the main elements of the communication. So I will stop here. Just to remind again, that's the ambition of the communication, not to forget the blue when we are discussing green transition and European Green Deal. So here it is, and of course I remain available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. thank you, Isabel, for the presentation. It's very informative, and I think you gave us a lot of clues. I will only ask the next speakers to try to stick as much as possible to the time allotted, because we have quite a tight schedule. And we will now hear from the Director General of Maritime Policy of the Portuguese Ministry of the Sea. Helena Vieira will present Portugal's National Maritime Strategy 21-23, which was also just adopted and represents a concrete contribution to the implementation of EU's Integrated Maritime Policy. Helena, thank you very much for traveling to Barcelona and for joining us here today. The floor is yours. Muito obrigado.
So, good afternoon, everyone. It's with great pleasure, despite all the difficulties, that I am here today. I would like to thank the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, the Spanish Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, DG Mare, the European Institute of the Mediterranean for hosting the conference, the Union for the Mediterranean to be a partner, and mostly to the Council for inviting me to be here. So I've prepared a small slides to be part of what I'm speaking, because I think it's easier to follow what I say when there's some images. Oh, it feels almost natural to be with this. I forgot, sorry. So I'm here representing the Minister of the Sea. Today is European Maritime Day. There's a lot of things going on, even in our country. So today, actually, we make public the final text of the National Ocean Strategy that was just approved on the 6th of May. So today is the day we release the final text also. So there's a lot of things happening, and we have to divide everyone. I am the Director General of Maritime Policy. The Director General of Maritime Policy is the strategic and political arm of the Ministry of the Sea to help design, think, and implement the ocean policies, to monitor the ocean policies, which is a very important aspect of what we do. So we actually provide a lot of intelligence to the sector and to designing policies, but also we have a very important role in international ocean affairs, representing the ministry in a lot of these events and groups that make the policies internationally. And also, and linking to Isabel's presentation, there's a very specific role that we do related to ocean literacy, and we have the Blue School program in Portugal that is helping us to do this. So I would, as I just mentioned, next slide, please. Thank you, and next one, please. As it was mentioned before, the Portuguese ocean economy is quite relevant to the country. It represents 5.1% of the GDP of the country. It's the third sector in Portugal, only beaten by health sector and education sector, which are non-commercial sector. So this is the first biggest sector. It also represents 4% of the jobs in Portugal and 5.4% of the GVA of Portugal. So it's quite a relevant sector within the Portuguese economy. But most interesting are this bottom number here, which is that it's growing double the speed than the normal regular national economy, which is quite interesting also. Next slide, please. When you look into the sectors, this is when things need to be carefully analyzed. We see that the group of tourism, recreation, and sports actually accounts for the majority of the blue economy in Portugal. And then comes the food sector with fisheries, aquaculture, and all the transformation and commercialization of the seafood products. Within the maritime services, we actually include all the emergent sectors of the blue economy. but we also include a lot of the digital sectors as well. So it's quite a broad and vast group of entities, and then very closely the ports, transports, and logistics within the Portuguese economy. So when we look at this, it actually feels quite interesting to understand that the current heavy sectors in Portugal are probably not going to be the heavy sectors in 10 years from now. And this shift is quite important in the new National Ocean Strategy. And next slide, please. On this slide, I just want to point out the bottom number, which is from those 5% exports. If you look just at the agro-food total national exports, actually the seafood is the most exported portion of the agro-food sector in Portugal. Before wine, before olive oil, and most of the Portuguese actually, and even Europeans don't have this idea. So this is quite an important sector here. Next slide, please, and next one. So as I just mentioned, Portugal just approved its third National Ocean Strategy. And as the ambassador so well said, the first one was published in 2006. And this one is the next one, 2021, 2030. Next slide, please. This National Ocean Strategy was inspired on one hand by the previous ocean strategies and by the monitoring of the effect that they have had in the country. But mostly it is inspired in the two main international documents that are relevant for the ocean, the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, and the new European Green Deal and the subsequent communications. Of course, the UN Second World Ocean Assessment also has an important role in what was considered here. And the mission, the Starfish report of the mission Oceans was also very relevant to design this National Ocean Strategy. Next slide, please. In this strategy, I think this is the biggest difference to its ancestors. It's the vision of this strategy, so which reflects the vision of the Ministry of the Sea and the minister as well, which is that we cannot aim for a sustainable development in the next decade for the ocean if we don't put the health of the ocean first. So the vision is that we need a healthy ocean as the pillar to develop a sustainable blue economy, to develop the Portuguese well-being, but mostly important to also consolidate Portugal's role as a global leader in ocean governance, supported all of this in scientific knowledge. I think we've been through a year of pandemics, of misinformation, of where scientific data actually demonstrated the value it has for political decision. And we believe that this is to be also implemented into the ocean. Next slide, please. In this new National Ocean Strategy, we have 10 strategic goals for the decade that go from fighting climate change to safety, sovereignty, and security. And we have 13 priority intervention areas. And all of these are interconnected. So there's not one of these single 13 priority intervention areas that do not contribute to one of the strategic goals. Next slide, please. For the decades, so by 2030, we want to achieve 34 targets. These targets were distributed per strategic goal. So I'm just putting here some examples. For example, for the strategic goal 1, which is related to the climate change fighting and restoration of the ecosystems of the ocean, we want, for example, to classify 30% of the national marine waters into marine protected areas. For another one, to keep increasing the value of the blue economy into the national economy by 30%. And here we put 30% because we already accounted with the COVID impact under this sector as well. Another example, for example, is on the SG9, which is the reindustrialization of the Portuguese economy using the blue economy as a motor. And we want to increase by 20% the value of industrial production in the emerging sector. So we're talking here about renewable energies, we're talking here about biotechnology, about offshore aquaculture and these sectors. These 34 targets are actually the basis for the action plan of the National Ocean Strategy. Next slide, please. The action plan, so this strategy was approved on the 6th of May, being released text today. And on the next 60 days, we will approve the action plan that sets the roadmap for implementing this strategy. This strategy, as the ambassador also mentioned, was a very transparent process, and it was very heavily participated by the public. We had a 1.5 month of public consultation. We received hundreds of contributions. So it was a very well participated document. And the action plan, the same thing. This action plan was built with all the other ministries, because the sea is transversal to many, many sectors. And also it was built with all the civil society, private and public civil society stakeholders. It contains 184 actions. On the contrary to the strategy, which is 10 years in duration, this action plan has durations of 4 years, more or less. It can be, we encourage it to be revised and to be adapted under the current conditions. And it's also the basis for what we do, which is very important, evaluating the impact of the policies and the measures and monitoring what the impact is on the social, economic, and now we are trying also on the environmental indicators that we can monitor. Next slide, please. So this is the Portuguese view and the National Ocean Strategy. And then what I'm trying to do in the next few slides of this presentation is to link the national strategy to the Atlantic and to the Mediterranean strategies. So when Portugal, along with Spain, Ireland, and France are part of the Atlantic Strategic Committee. And there is now the Action Plan 2.0, which is the revision of the first action plan of the Atlantic, which has 4 pillars. These pillars are ports as gateways for and hubs for blue economy. Pillar 2, ocean literacy and blue skills. Pillar 3, marine renewable energy. And Pillar 4, healthy oceans and resilient coasts. All very coherent with the communication that Isabel just showed us about. When we look, next slide, please. When we look at the Mediterranean space and to the WestMed Blue Economy Initiative, where we also represent Portugal, there's 3 major goals in this framework for action: a safer and secure maritime space, a smart and resilient blue economy, and an improved maritime governance. So next slide, please. Under the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union, we have been working tirelessly in the past months to adopt the Council conclusions on sustainable blue economies. These Council conclusions are aligned with the EU Green Deals, and they actually act upon 4 main areas, recognizing that the oceans and seas play a crucial role as a vital climate regulator, the importance of supporting research, education, innovation, and open data to better understand and protect and restore oceans and seas. The blue economy as an indispensable, and I think a must in achieving the transformation set out in the communication that we just heard about. And finally, we need also to move to a sustainable blue economy that it's socially fair. So this social component that it's being brought on is quite important, namely due to the challenges posed by the COVID crisis. So when we think of Portuguese National Ocean Strategy, Atlantic Action Plan, Mediterranean, WestMed Blue Initiative, and the Council conclusions, next slide, please. When we think of them and how they relate, we actually made this exercise. I know the slide is small, but I think you can see, I don't want you to read it all, but what we've tried to do was to map out all the strategic goals of the Portuguese National Ocean Strategy that are represented here by colors. And then on each column, we have one of these areas: the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and the Integrated Maritime Policy with the Council conclusions. And you can see that it's very rare to have an empty square, meaning that these four strategies actually are very cross-cutting. They are very coherent amongst them. I'm just going to cite an example, and I think I'm going to choose the first line, so the green one, which is the climate change, where you can see that it actually meets the Atlantic Strategy Action Plan on the pillar 4, which is healthy oceans and resilient coasts, but it also meets two goals of the WestMed initiative: the maritime safety in what relates to marine pollution, but also the biodiversity and conservation. And when we look at the Council conclusions, it actually meets 3 of the Council conclusions areas. So we've done this exercise to all of them, and I think this was quite useful to also understand that nationally we must look at the global strategies of the oceans or the seas that we relate to, in order to actually maximize the impact of each of the measures in the action plans that we are considering here. So I will now, next slide, please. I'd like to finish my presentation at this point, and I remain available for questions. I could say a lot more, but I wanted to stick to my given time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena. I think it's very impressive, and I hope that we will have the time to also ask you some questions. But I think that we can take as a kind of headline to put the health of the ocean first, which I think it's very relevant. Ahora escucharemos al representante del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores de Cooperación de España, Jaime de Olmo, que precisamente nos habla de la iniciativa 5+5, de la estructura y de la función de la WestMed Initiative. Jaime, tienes la palabra y gracias por estar con nosotros.
Muchas gracias, embajador. Muchas gracias al Consulado de Portugal en Barcelona por la organización tan magnífica de este evento. Y quiero dar las gracias en nombre del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores, Unión Europea de Cooperación, a Portugal por la iniciativa. Creemos que ha sido una organización muy oportuna y la verdad que no podíamos faltar a la propuesta de participación. Quiero también agradecer al Instituto Europeo del Mediterráneo de Barcelona por la acogida y a todos los participantes también por su entrega a este evento. Voy a intentar compartir la pantalla, a ver si no tengo problema. Bien, imagino que se puede ver, ¿verdad? Le doy aquí a la pantalla grande. Vale. Muy bien, pues voy a comenzar esta pequeña presentación sobre la iniciativa WestMed, que tiene este nombre tan extenso: Iniciativa para el Desarrollo Sostenible de la Economía Azul en el Mediterráneo Occidental, y que está muy enlazada con la perspectiva 5+5 del Mediterráneo, el llamado diálogo 5+5. Sabemos que estamos en la década de los océanos, la década de Naciones Unidas para los océanos, y que muy oportunamente, además, Portugal lo ha hecho coincidir con su estrategia nacional. La verdad que es desde luego todo un acierto. Y este aspecto de la década de los océanos, que tan acertadamente la ONU lo ha declarado para esta década del 21 al 30, de 2021 al 30, guarda necesariamente una gran relación con la gran expansión que se prevé para los distintos sectores de los distintos mares y océanos del mundo. Y es un hecho, va a ser una expansión que se promete en los distintos ámbitos, en distintos sectores económicos, tanto los tradicionales como los más innovadores, y debe estar forzosamente mantenida bajo el aspecto de la sostenibilidad y el aspecto de la salud de los océanos, como también muy acertadamente la representante de Portugal, Elena, lo ha expuesto de cara a la presentación de la Estrategia Nacional de Portugal. Enlazando con esta década de los océanos y la importancia que tiene este desarrollo económico y la sostenibilidad, tenemos las estrategias marítimas de cuenca de la Unión Europea y la iniciativa IEMed es una de esas estrategias. Estas estrategias de cuenca de la Unión Europea son estrategias de crecimiento y desarrollo que aprovechan las ventajas y afrontan las dificultades de cada región marítima de la Unión Europea, en un sentido amplio, teniendo en cuenta que cada región marítima es única y requiere una estrategia propia. Y en este sentido, la iniciativa IEMed es una estrategia de cuenca que ha sido auspiciada por la Comisión Europea, por la Unión por el Mediterráneo y en la cual somos participantes directos una serie de países que ahora presentaré. Existe también otra estrategia marítima de cuenca, como también ha señalado también la ponente portuguesa, la estrategia atlántica, en la que también participamos muy activamente y que tiene un papel muy similar al de IEMed y que además trabajan también en conjunto, especialmente en los países en los que compartimos cuenca. Con este nombre tan largo de iniciativa IEMed se puede expresar todo lo que contiene y viene a ser básicamente una iniciativa como tal, una acción, es decir, no es un órgano, no es una organización como tal, no tiene una estructura propia de una organización, sino que es una acción que está promovida, como señalé antes, por la Comisión Europea, por la Unión por el Mediterráneo y por los Estados miembros que estamos implicados. Y con este nombre de Iniciativa para el Desarrollo Económico, busca, como señaló, desarrollo económico, es decir, busca la productividad, pero siempre desde un enfoque de la sostenibilidad. Y como señaló también Isabel, por parte de la Comisión Europea, esa productividad, ese desarrollo sostenible no puede ser solo económico, sino que debe ser también social y debe ser también medioambiental. Y busca el desarrollo, como señaló, de la economía azul. De la economía azul, que es el potencial, como señaló ahí, de innovación y crecimiento que aportan los mares y los océanos. Un gran potencial que, como indiqué anteriormente, en esta próxima década puede conocer una expansión espectacular. Pero además busca la iniciativa de los actores públicos y privados. Es una iniciativa, por tanto, que va a tratar de tener en cooperación actores públicos y privados para tratar de encontrar ese potencial de innovación siempre desde el punto de vista de la sostenibilidad. Y con un aspecto muy destacado, que todavía no he señalado aquí, que es que no tiene fondos. No tiene fondos propios, mejor dicho, pero sí que busca la mejor coordinación para poder aspirar a distintas medidas de financiación para poder desarrollar estas actividades. Y una segunda característica muy destacada de esta iniciativa IEMed es la participación de los países del norte de África junto con los de la ribera norte del Mediterráneo. Es decir, entramos ya en un ámbito del llamado diálogo 5+5, que como sabemos es el marco de reunión más antiguo que existe entre los países de ambas orillas y que fue instaurado para iniciar un proceso de cooperación regional en el Mediterráneo occidental. Son estos 10 países que aquí señalo y que, bueno, pues por sus relaciones, aunque algunos no tienen propiamente en ribera mediterránea, pero por sus relaciones se considera desde luego como que participan de la influencia del Mediterráneo directamente. En definitiva, esta iniciativa IEMed es una acción de estructura que no tiene una estructura oficial como tal, ni fondos, promovida por Comisión Europea, Unión por el Mediterráneo, Estados miembros concernidos, que, como más adelante veremos, se sustancia en el fomento de proyectos colaborativos en ámbitos públicos y privados y en la transmisión de necesidades al sector público y a la Comisión Europea para lograr un desarrollo sostenible de la economía azul en este entorno y con un diálogo 5+5. La iniciativa tiene 3 objetivos básicos, que son estos 3 que aquí señalo: espacio marítimo más seguro, economía azul inteligente y resiliente y una mayor gobernanza del mar. Estos 3 objetivos fueron presentados en esta comunicación que aquí señalo, que es del año 2017, y que básicamente la razón de esos 3 objetivos es la siguiente. En primer lugar, un espacio marítimo más seguro, que es como anteriormente se ha señalado, sin seguridad en el mar no puede haber un desarrollo económico sostenible. Y sabemos que en el Mediterráneo existen numerosos riesgos, desde el gran tráfico de buques que existe, a los riesgos que hay de contaminación, a, por supuesto, el gran problema que tenemos de la inmigración también en el mar. Un segundo objetivo es la economía azul inteligente y resiliente, que básicamente busca el conocimiento y la innovación para la regeneración del mercado y las oportunidades tecnológicas, de manera que las actividades tradicionales también encuentren nuevos sectores y nuevas oportunidades. Y luego, la mejor gobernanza en el mar, que es un elemento esencial, como más adelante también señalaré, pero que busca básicamente el establecer unas distintas instituciones que un marco normativo y un marco institucional adecuado para el correcto desarrollo de las distintas actividades. En el año 2018, en la reunión ministerial de Argel, se estableció una hoja de ruta en la que hubo 6 prioridades fundamentales para desarrollar estos 3 objetivos y concretar más las distintas acciones. Son estos 6 objetivos que aquí señalo. Y ahora comento brevemente el origen de esta iniciativa. Esta iniciativa, IEMed, del Mediterráneo Occidental, se inició en el año 2015 por la Declaración Ministerial de la Unión por el Mediterráneo. Posteriormente, en 2016, los ministros del ámbito 5+5 se comprometieron al desarrollo de la misma, y fue en 2017 cuando los ministros de la Unión Europea, reunidos en Consejo, adoptaron la comunicación de la Comisión que alienta e impulsa el desarrollo de esta iniciativa. Posteriormente, en 2018, se produjo la declaración ministerial de Argel, como señalado antes, con la hoja de ruta, y una cuestión que es muy importante, y es que en 2019 se comenzó a trabajar con el mecanismo de asistencia de IEMed. El mecanismo de asistencia, que es el equipo con el que sobre el terreno trabajamos y que más adelante también voy a presentar. La estructura, por tanto, de esta iniciativa, como señaló, tiene como base el mecanismo de asistencia, tiene unos coordinadores nacionales a nivel de cada país, que en España somos el Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores, Unión Europea de Cooperación y la Secretaría General de Pesca, perteneciente al Ministerio de Agricultura, Pesca y Alimentación. Y los coordinadores nos reunimos en el Comité Director del Mediterráneo Occidental, que se reúne cada cierto tiempo. Este Comité Director está dirigido por una copresidencia, formado por un copresidente de la Ribera Norte del Mediterráneo, que actualmente es Italia, y por un copresidente de la Ribera Sur, que actualmente es Libia. El equipo del mecanismo de asistencia está formado por un equipo central y por unos llamados hubs nacionales, que son expertos destacados en cada uno de los países. Podemos verlos aquí, más o menos. Aquí tienen hasta sus nombres. Y estos hubs nacionales, estos destacados en cada uno de los países, tratan fundamentalmente de identificar y promover las oportunidades de financiación para proyectos, de acuerdo con la hoja de ruta y las prioridades que también se declaren a nivel nacional, asesorar y ayudar a las partes interesadas en la creación de proyectos y estudios de viabilidad y encontrar socios para cada uno de ellos, o aportar conocimientos técnicos en la preparación de propuestas de proyectos, entre muchas otras cuestiones que aquí se ven señaladas. Además, el equipo nos ha permitido igualmente el desarrollo de debates temáticos y encuentros sectoriales para poder evaluar las necesidades y conocer bien a los sectores. Y ya entrando un poquito más en detalle, se han llegado a formar dentro de IEMed aspectos que han requerido cierto desarrollo, un desarrollo mucho más profesional por la materia. En concreto, destaco aquí el grupo técnico de transporte sostenible, llamado también de Green Shipping, básicamente referido al transporte con una menor incidencia en el medio ambiente marino. Este grupo de transporte está trabajando con bastante intensidad, llegando a tener una serie de prioridades, entre otras, pues, el camino hacia una zona libre de emisiones, la armonización en materia de seguimiento de las emisiones, elaboración de un estudio de viabilidad para valorar la inversión en energía sostenible, o la adaptación de buques comerciales o creación de red de puertos como comunidades energéticas. Igual que este grupo de transporte sostenible y Green Shipping, que ha tenido y que está teniendo bastante evolución, y que además por parte de España lo acogemos desde luego con mucho entusiasmo, se están creando otros grupos técnicos, en particular el de acuicultura sostenible, que se está formando, y se va a crear también un grupo sobre clústeres marítimos. ¿Cómo trabajamos? Bueno, el resumen de esta diapositiva, porque aquí vemos distintos cuadros que nos señalan distintos aspectos de trabajo de la iniciativa, pero básicamente el elemento clave son estas tres frases que aquí les señalo. el apoyo para el desarrollo de proyectos, el apoyo para la identificación de socios en los distintos proyectos y tratar de encontrar oportunidades de financiación nacional y comunitaria para estos proyectos. Y bien, pues nosotros podemos ayudar. Nosotros podemos ofrecer ayuda en función de si se tiene una idea para encontrar fuentes de financiación, estructurar la idea, encontrar socios, o si ya tienen una experiencia con un proyecto, se puede dar difusión, conectarles con posibles proyectos parecidos, encontrar espacios en los que las capacidades como socio puedan ser interesantes para otros proyectos, pero no olvidemos una cuestión que es clave en esta iniciativa, que es que estos proyectos deben ser cooperativos, cooperativos con las dos orillas del Mediterráneo. Eso es un elemento esencial de esta estrategia. La cooperación con las dos orillas del Mediterráneo y también, lógicamente, entre distintos países de la ribera norte, países europeos. Quiero cerrar esta presentación muy general de la iniciativa IEMed con su vinculación con la planificación espacial marina, con la ordenación del espacio marino, que también enlaza con el objetivo número 3 de la mejor gobernanza en el mar. La planificación espacial marina forma parte del objetivo estratégico de IEMed y está recogida como tal en la hoja de ruta. Y además es que es un elemento inherente propiamente a esta iniciativa, puesto que la participación de los distintos actores y las instituciones en los distintos proyectos requiere por fuerza la existencia, como señalado desde hace un momento, la existencia de consorcios entre esos grupos de distintos países con enfoques en sectores muy particulares, muy clave para el desarrollo económico, que necesariamente tiene que redundar en el avance para el método ecosistémico de planificación espacial marina y la posible solución de conflictos en ámbitos transfronterizos. Eso es un elemento clave para un buen desarrollo de planificación espacial. La existencia de esa vinculación entre unos sectores y otros, la existencia de una vinculación entre distintos países con distintas líneas de proyecto y bueno, pues el desarrollo de ellos mismos puede perfectamente facilitar la existencia de una mejor planificación espacial para evitar que existan conflictos entre distintos sectores. También puede haber proyectos propios de IEMed en la planificación espacial marina y sería muy idóneo, porque este todavía no existe, el intercambio de información y datos para valorar impactos acumulados y poder tener mejores datos socioeconómicos en los distintos sectores marítimos. Quiero con ello, con esta pequeña presentación, simplemente terminar señalando en definitiva que es una estrategia que, como se ha visto, es muy joven, tiene apenas 2-3 años de auténtica aplicación y que persigue un desarrollo sostenible de la economía marina y marítima a través de iniciativa pública y privada cuya aplicación es inherente al desarrollo de una planificación espacial, a la que puede contribuir además muy positivamente. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Jaime. Muy interesante. Y seguimos con la IEMed Initiative, pero ahora centrado en sus actividades en el área de la pesca y de la acuicultura. Y tendremos con nosotros a Ignacio Gandarias, en representación del Ministerio de Agricultura, Pescas y Alimentación de España. Por favor, Ignacio, adelante.
El micrófono.
El micrófono, por favor, el sonido.
¿Ahora?
Sí, perfecto, gracias.
Muchísimas gracias. Embajador, muchísimas gracias por darme la palabra y a todos los intervinientes que me han precedido por sus palabras y por la orientación general que se está dando dentro del marco y las actividades que se están realizando. Quiero agradecer, evidentemente, a las autoridades de Portugal, la presencia del embajador, a la comisión con la presentación que nos han realizado desde la DG Mare, fundamentalmente, y a todos los participantes que nos están siguiendo para festejar y celebrar este Día Marítimo Europeo 2021, que creo que es un día esencial para todas las actividades relacionadas con el medio marino. La presentación que tengo prevista se la voy a facilitar más tarde. Yo creo que en este momento siendo el cuarto participante, voy a aprovecharme un poco de las reflexiones que se han venido realizando durante los minutos anteriores para dar una visión fundamentalmente sectorial de lo que se pretende dentro del marco y de los objetivos que nosotros pretendemos dentro del marco de la economía azul. Desde el punto de vista sectorial, pesca y acuicultura, entendemos que son dos actividades esenciales, importantísimas para el presente y el futuro del desarrollo de la economía azul. Han venido participando durante siglos de un medio marino, han aprovechado sus recursos, han alimentado a las poblaciones, han desarrollado las áreas del litoral, han contribuido a que se cree empleo, que se cree fijación en estas áreas del litoral de esa población y con el apoyo y el desarrollo, evidentemente, de la industria de la comercialización y de la industria de la transformación de los productos de la pesca, han servido de soporte para la economía local y el desarrollo de las áreas del litoral. Este enfoque creemos que es importantísimo porque la pesca y la acuicultura son parte de la solución futura para el desarrollo estratégico de la economía azul. Son parte de esa solución porque entendemos que ambas actividades van a contribuir a los grandes objetivos que ya se han expresado y que en parte, fundamentalmente, voy a intentar recoger. Por un lado, tanto la pesca y la acuicultura son actividades que van a ser fundamentales para el uso sostenible de los recursos marinos y pesqueros, que en el marco de la economía azul es uno de los objetivos que todos pretendemos y evidentemente España coincide con el resto y con la política europea y estamos convencidos también, haciendo ya una incidencia dentro del marco de IEMed, que también comparten nuestros socios dentro de IEMed de países no europeos. En consecuencia, la pesca y la acuicultura para el futuro de la economía azul van a ser elementos fundamental en el marco de esa sostenibilidad que todos perseguimos. Y en el área mediterránea, muchísimo más. En el área mediterránea, en este momento, tenemos un gran desafío en el marco de la reglamentación europea y en el marco de la legislación, en este caso me refiero evidentemente a la española, para que los recursos pesqueros sean mantenibles, para que la actividad pesquera, fundamentalmente en la flota de arrastre demersal, sea sostenible y estamos empleando todos nuestros medios para que esa actividad pueda conservarse y garantizar a los pescadores que el futuro pueda estar mantenido y garantizado. Por otro lado, la pesca y la acuicultura, dentro de este marco de sostenibilidad de los recursos, deben contribuir y contribuyen, de hecho, a la protección y a la restauración de los ecosistemas marinos. Creemos que a través, fundamentalmente, de elementos tan importantes como la selectividad de las artes, como la creación dentro de, en este caso, del Mediterráneo, pero también en otras áreas geográficas donde la economía azul, España, y en la economía azul España está participando, como en la estrategia atlántica, que es la creación de áreas marinas protegidas, como la creación de reservas marinas, en las cuales estamos desde la política pesquera española empeñados y creando y manteniendo, son también elementos esenciales para este marco de la economía azul. Otras dos cuestiones importantísimas en las cuales tanto la pesca y la acuicultura deben contribuir es a la reducción de la contaminación y a la contribución a la economía circular de la política europea. Vemos que nuestros pescadores, nuestras actividades, nuestros acuicultores se encuentran ya en un nivel elevadísimo para poder contribuir a esta reducción. Lo están haciendo, están incluyendo ya elementos de reducción de esa contaminación propia y también contribuyendo a reducir esa contaminación que no es directamente de las áreas de la pesca y de la acuicultura, sino que en muchos casos proviene de las zonas del litoral, para que el mar nuestros mares, nuestros océanos y el mar Mediterráneo se encuentre cada vez más limpio y pueda garantizar, evidentemente, la conservación también de los recursos. Contribuyen ambas actividades a la alimentación sostenible. Evidentemente, esto va a ser un presente y un futuro. Seguimos siendo, dentro de la Unión Europea, España en concreto, un país en el cual el consumo de pescado es elevado, y dentro del área mediterránea creo que interesa resaltar y por todos conocer que se trata de pesquerías en el marco de la pesca extractiva, son pesquerías que nosotros definimos de la pesca costera artesanal. Pesquerías de un día, de 2 días, que salen al mar, que vuelven a suministrar alimentos a la población, que comercializan esos productos y que vuelven otra vez a salir al mar. Es una economía basada fundamentalmente en el consumo nacional. Es verdad que otro de los grandes desafíos que tiene esta área geográfica y esta economía de pesquera y acuícola de cara al futuro, quizás es la internacionalización de sus productos y la exportación de los productos. Pero consideramos que este es un paso adelante que tenemos que dar. Dentro de este área, creemos que IEMed puede contribuir a la mejor gobernanza del área mediterránea. Esa gobernanza voy a continuación a expresarla en el marco en el cual nos estamos moviendo. Debe pasar porque todos los países en los cuales estamos trabajando contribuyamos al gran objetivo de la sostenibilidad. El Mediterráneo no se puede sostener única y exclusivamente con la contribución de los países europeos. Necesitamos esa cooperación y ese apoyo también, y esas acciones e iniciativas de los países ribereños que no forman parte de la Unión Europea y que se encuentran con nosotros trabajando en el marco del IEMed para que esa gobernanza, esa sostenibilidad se pueda llegar a conseguir dentro del Mediterráneo. Compartimos, evidentemente, con la Comisión todos los puntos que he hablado y ha comentado en cuanto a la dimensión social de la economía azul. Entendemos que, fundamentalmente, esta economía azul debe mantener y desarrollar estas áreas del litoral, proteger el empleo, proteger la fijación de la población en el territorio y darles oportunidades. En el área mediterránea, y no creo que hable única y exclusivamente por España, hay todos los países que formamos parte de IEMed, tenemos una población ligada a la pesca y ligada quizás al turismo. Pero la pesca para nosotros creemos que es, como ya he mencionado, una actividad esencial de cara al futuro y, en consecuencia, este desarrollo social y dimensión social de la economía azul no podemos abandonarla en ningún momento. Y creo también que los países del litoral ribereño que no forman parte de la Unión Europea, que forman parte de IEMed, tienen una pesquería artesanal de la cual dependen en gran parte estos recursos, y entre todos debemos apoyar a esta población para que su mantenimiento, su continuidad esté garantizada. Hay otro punto importantísimo que es la compatibilidad de las actividades. Se ha hablado de la planificación marítima espacial. Evidentemente, nosotros desde el punto de vista sectorial, tanto de la pesca como de la acuicultura, lo que perseguiremos en todo momento es que en el marco de esa planificación marina espacial, las actividades ligadas a la acuicultura y las actividades ligadas a la pesca puedan continuar realizándose en las áreas geográficas en las cuales hoy se mantienen. La acuicultura es esencial que se definan espacios, como así estamos haciéndolo en este momento a nivel de la planificación marítima española, y que contribuirá evidentemente a la planificación marítima europea, pero también es esencial que dentro del marco de la economía azul sostenible y el desarrollo de otras actividades ligadas al mar, mantengamos y preservemos las áreas tradicionales de pesca de tal manera que no haya una interferencia entre actividades económicas nuevas y la actividad que habitualmente viene desarrollándose en esas áreas geográficas como es la pesquera. Dentro del marco de IEMed y dentro del marco de la economía azul, me gustaría resaltar fundamentalmente el aspecto de la financiación. Se ha hablado de IEMed, que nosotros contribuimos a esa búsqueda de proyectos, que nosotros dentro del plan de recuperación y transformación español estamos incluyendo una serie de ayudas y proyectos encaminadas a la presentación de proyectos que vayan hacia el desarrollo de la economía azul en nuestro litoral. Esto se va a poner en marcha a lo largo de este año 2021 con proyectos de cara al 2023 y, como menciono, se encuentran dentro del marco de recuperación y transparencia. Entendemos que es una oportunidad que no podemos desaprovechar, dar espacio a ese también partenariado público-privado, es decir, que la iniciativa privada y la iniciativa pública participen juntamente en el desarrollo de estos proyectos, que los centros de investigación y las universidades se incorporen a esta área de trabajo y que nos puedan aportar proyectos e ideas concretas con su experiencia de cara al futuro. Entrando, y por ir terminando, dentro de las acciones emprendidas por parte de España en el marco de IEMed, hay una contribución que es esencial de cara a la gobernanza en el mar, a la sostenibilidad de los recursos. Es la lucha contra la pesca ilegal no declarada y no reglamentada. Perdón. En esta lucha contra la pesca ilegal no declarada y no reglamentada, España es una punta de lanza dentro del espacio mundial. Consideramos, y así lo hemos hecho saber, y agradecemos a la Dirección General, a la DG Mare, su apoyo financiero, la creación de un aula virtual. Perdón, una aula virtual que va a dar formación a todos los expertos, y no tan expertos, evidentemente, del área de los países del área de IEMed, de tal manera que con esta formación podamos contribuir entre todos a erradicar la pesca ilegal no declarada y no reglamentada dentro del Mediterráneo y a luchar en la medida de nuestras posibilidades en los elementos de control, en los elementos de vigilancia, para que aquellos que en algún momento tengan la tentación de realizar este tipo de actividad puedan ser castigados, evidentemente, penalizados y mentalizados. También creemos que es importante la formación de cara a la sostenibilidad y a la lucha contra la pesca ilegal de todos los pescadores y de los acuicultores. Por último, estamos centralizando el esfuerzo en la actividad de la acuicultura, creando, como ha mencionado ya mi compañero Jaime del Olmo, un grupo técnico dentro de IEMed destinado a la acuicultura. Está ya aceptada la propuesta de la creación de ese grupo de IEMed y creemos que lo que pretendemos es una cooperación. Bueno, pretendemos una cooperación entre los países del norte y del sur del Mediterráneo en tratar temas tan importantes como el impacto ambiental de la acuicultura, como el apoyo a la diversificación de especies y productos, como la coexistencia con otros usos marítimos, como ya he expresado anteriormente, como la descarbonización de la cadena de suministro en el sector, y con el objetivo de crear unas hojas de ruta comunes o estrategias dentro del desarrollo de esta actividad que nos permitan conseguir los objetivos que tenemos en este momento. Por no extenderme más, creemos que IEMed es importantísimo de cara a la conservación y a de los recursos marinos, a la consecución de nuestros objetivos dentro del marco de la economía azul y, desde luego, a la prioridad de que la pesca y la acuicultura, que para nosotros es esencial, se mantenga como actividades esenciales dentro del desarrollo. Muchísimas gracias por esta oportunidad y quedo a disposición de todos ustedes y de los participantes para cualquier pregunta que deseen realizar. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Ignacio. Muchas gracias, muy interesante. Pues yo ahora debería estar invitando a Josep y a María Ángeles para hacer las conclusiones, pero todavía nos queda algunos oradores y ahora tengo el placer de invitar a Isidro González, que es el secretario general adjunto de la Unión para el Mediterráneo, que nos va a hablar del papel de la Unión en esta economía azul más sostenible en el Mediterráneo. Isidro, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Tienes la palabra.
Muchas gracias, embajador. Intentaré ser breve, pues la tarde se está alargando y sé que hay un programa que cumplir. Muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí y a los que nos siguen online. Simplemente quería contar brevemente nuestra labor en la Unión por el Mediterráneo desde hace ya unos años en nuestro trabajo por una economía azul. Economía azul que se ha transformado a día de hoy en la séptima economía mundial, pero que las perspectivas son de que en el futuro pues, será mucho más arriba, puesto que no olvidemos que el 71% de la superficie del planeta es mar, es océano. En ese 71% el Mediterráneo representa una porción muy pequeña, apenas el 2%, pero por el Mediterráneo está sufriendo un momento muy, muy difícil, que es lo que hace que trabajemos desde la Unión por el Mediterráneo junto con la Unión Europea, que es nuestra copresidencia, de forma muy, muy intensa. El Mediterráneo, la región mediterránea es, después del Ártico, la segunda región del planeta que más está sufriendo el cambio climático. Las temperaturas en esta región están subiendo un 20% más rápido que la media mundial. Han aumentado desde la época preindustrial un 1,5% estas temperaturas y un 0,4 grados más que la media mundial. Y no quiero marear con muchas cifras. Esto ha hecho que nuestros 42 países miembros se hayan puesto manos a la obra, no solo a la hora de abordar la economía azul, sino el cambio climático, etcétera. Y que hayamos aprobado ya desde nuestra creación en 2008 y funcionamiento efectivo en 2010 dos declaraciones ministeriales de nuestros 42 países miembros sobre economía azul. La más reciente, el 2 de febrero de este año, y yo creo que tiene mucho mérito porque entre nuestros 42 países miembros están no solo los 27 de la Unión Europea, sino el arco balcánico marítimo, digamos, pues Bosnia, Montenegro, Albania, tenemos Turquía, tenemos Líbano, tenemos a Israel y Palestina, que son miembros nuestros, que aunque estén como estén en esos momentos en Oriente Medio, son miembros de pleno derecho los dos, en pie de igualdad, porque así se reconocen mutuamente, de la Unión por el Mediterráneo, y también forman parte de nuestros consensos y del último de ellos, la Declaración Ministerial de Economía Azul Sostenible del 2 de febrero. Entre esos, el resto de países, bueno, pues ya desde Egipto y toda la banda mediterránea e incluso atlántica, puesto que Mauritania también es miembro de la Unión por el Mediterráneo. El 2 de febrero, como digo, aprobamos esta declaración en nuestros 42 países, que supone una agenda de trabajo para los próximos 5 o 6 años, que marca también a la Unión Europea las prioridades y hace saber a Bruselas, a la Unión Europea, cuáles son las prioridades de los países de la ribera del sur del Mediterráneo, que es muy importante, porque no olvidemos que el Mediterráneo es un mar que compartimos, y de ahí la importancia política. Entre esas prioridades, voy a ser rápido, bueno, pues hemos decidido en una declaración que contiene más de 80 puntos, muy rica, que aconsejo su lectura, sobre todo a los expertos, reforzar el diálogo entre nuestros países en materia de economía azul, buscando alianzas, oportunidades de cooperación y la puesta en común de recursos y desarrollo de proyectos concretos. En relación con el empleo, el trabajo, las cifras indican que la gran mayoría de empleos de la economía azul del Mediterráneo obviamente están relacionados con el turismo, que ha sufrido, como no, un golpe muy importante con la pandemia, que tanto ha cambiado las cosas en el último año. Otros sectores importantes de empleo en la economía azul, en la región mediterránea, pues viene a ser el transporte marítimo, como no, y otro 10% lo representa la pesca. No olvidemos, cuando hablamos del Mediterráneo, que pese a ser apenas el 2% de la superficie marítima del planeta, por él transita el 27%, y sigo mareando con cifras, el 27% de la navegación marítima mundial. Eso nos presenta un mar que sufre un gran estrés, que sufre una alta polución y que sufre muchos problemas, algunos de los cuales brevemente voy a abordar, De ahí la importancia de este consenso a 42 bandas logrado el 2 de febrero. Respecto a la pesca, en esta declaración ministerial conseguimos pues ponernos de acuerdo en la necesidad de ir hacia una acuicultura sostenible. Volviendo con las cifras, esperamos que hacia para el 2025, dentro solamente de 4 años, el 52% de la producción de pescado para consumo humano provendrá de la acuicultura. Son cifras que a mí me sorprenden, pero bueno, eso son las cifras que tenemos. Y necesitamos desarrollar una acuicultura sostenible en la región mediterránea. Como digo, el tráfico marítimo es excesivo en el Mediterráneo. Tenemos un problema grave con los grandes contaminadores que son los cruceros, la industria turística, aunque ha sufrido un parón el último año por la pandemia. La abundancia de cruceros, el 10% de los cruceros mundiales transitan el Mediterráneo, pues crea un problema. Y en esta declaración ministerial se aprobó establecer acciones para la reducción de las emisiones de carbono, la utilización de tecnologías no contaminantes, combustibles alternativos, etcétera, impulsando inversiones en infraestructuras y que vayan hacia este horizonte de sostenibilidad. Otro problema que hemos tratado desde nuestra fundación en la Unión por el Mediterráneo y que por supuesto se ha reflejado en nuestras 2 declaraciones ministeriales y también en esta última es el problema de los plásticos y de los microplásticos, que no solo tienen un impacto negativo en el medio marino, sino también en las actividades de la economía azul, por supuesto el turismo. El turista que llega a un destino turístico y encuentra la playa llena de plásticos, ese turista no regresa. Y si no regresa, no se fideliza, y si no se fideliza, esa industria no tiene futuro. También afecta el plástico, por supuesto, a la pesca. Los últimos estudios que tenemos alertan de que en el año 2050 el tamaño de los peces en el Mediterráneo podría reducirse a la mitad o incluso a un 80% menos si no hacemos algo de forma muy urgente sobre el problema de los plásticos. Otros datos para mí escalofriantes nos dicen que cada minuto se arrojan 33.800 botellas de plástico al mar, del Mediterráneo, solo el Mediterráneo, cada minuto, de distinto tamaño, es una barbaridad. Aquí tenemos el enemigo del siglo XXI, que es el plástico, y de ahí que la UPM esté apoyando iniciativas piloto como la de BlueMed para un Mediterráneo libre de plásticos, o que trabajemos con iniciativas más limitadas como la llamada Cazadores de Plásticos o Plastic Busters con la Universidad de Siena en Italia para trabajar en el problema de los plásticos y microplásticos en el Adriático y en el resto del Mediterráneo. Para países cuya economía depende en un alto porcentaje de su PIB del turismo, como es España, como es Portugal, como es Francia, Italia, Egipto, Marruecos, muchos países de la ribera mediterránea, pues efectivamente la pandemia, como digo, ha supuesto un parón, ha supuesto un grave golpe económico. Antes de esa pandemia, el turismo costero y marítimo contribuía con un 11,3% al total del PIB de los países costeros del Mediterráneo. Suponía el 6,4% de las inversiones de capital y el 11,5% del empleo total. De ahí que el golpe haya sido tremendo, la pérdida de empleo es masiva y los países, sobre todo los países de la ribera sur del Mediterráneo, van a sufrir mucho para recuperarse. Y nosotros, por supuesto que también. Hemos propuesto que hay que intentar aprovechar de alguna manera de forma positiva la pandemia para repensar el modelo turístico, ir hacia un modelo de turismo sostenible, respetuoso con el medio ambiente. Queremos promover la digitalización del sector, el desarrollo de planes de acción para reducir las emisiones de carbono de toda la industria del turismo también, abordar la estacionalidad, el turismo masivo, promoviendo la diversificación de la oferta turística, promoviendo el ecoturismo y lo que se llama el turismo de nicho, por ejemplo, el turismo pesquero, el turismo culinario y el turismo deportivo. Con la Conferencia de Regiones Periféricas Marítimas, la UPM está elaborando un manual operativo relacionado con la regeneración social y económica del Mediterráneo tras la crisis, y en este manual operativo el desarrollo de este nuevo modelo de turismo respetuoso con el medio ambiente pues tiene un papel muy importante. Otra de las prioridades de nuestras declaraciones ministeriales, en especial de la última, es las herramientas en gestión integrada de zonas costeras basadas en los ecosistemas y la planificación espacial marítima. Y otra de las prioridades, que para mí también muy importante, son las energías renovables marinas, que se estima podrían proporcionar hasta el 10% de las necesidades de electricidad para Europa en el año 2050. Es un sector muy prometedor y creemos también que pueden ayudar a los países de la ribera sur del Mediterráneo a cumplir los objetivos de reducción de las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero y en la lucha contra el cambio climático, que, como digo, es tan aguda, o este problema es tan agudo en nuestro mar Mediterráneo. Y finalmente, estas declaraciones ministeriales evidentemente intentan identificar sectores propicios para las inversiones. Es muy importante que desde la Unión Europea se canalicen muchas inversiones para la economía azul y para ayudar a los países de la ribera sur del Mediterráneo. Nuestro próximo gran hito en materia de lucha contra el cambio climático va a ser una nueva reunión ministerial este año, el 5 de octubre, en Egipto, sobre medio ambiente y acción climática. Ahí queremos lanzar una nueva agenda medioambiental de la Unión por el Mediterráneo llamada Agenda 2030 Green and Med, o Agenda 2030 por un Mediterráneo más verde, que viene a ser pues, la extensión del Pacto Verde Europeo, del Green Deal, a el Mediterráneo. Tenemos que, en una Unión Europea que en ocasiones, no sé si el embajador estará de acuerdo conmigo, está un poco escorada hacia el centro y Europa Oriental, tenemos los países del sur que intentar que la Unión Europea mire también más a la vecindad sur, mire a nuestros países y a nuestros vecinos para ayudar un poco más. Queremos que esta nueva agenda medioambiental de la Unión por el Mediterráneo pues se base en 3 ejes: la economía verde circular, la contaminación terrestre, atmosférica y marina, y recursos naturales, ecosistemas, conservación y restauración. Esta reunión ministerial de Egipto será la segunda sobre este campo, medio ambiente y acción climática. Creemos que es una oportunidad, o será una oportunidad única, para impulsar la transición ecológica y económica a través de un enfoque de gobernanza múltiple, donde los actores locales y regionales tienen un papel clave que desempeñar. Como digo, se trata de que el 5 de octubre en Egipto consigamos los 42 países miembros de la Unión por el Mediterráneo, incluidos entre ellos algunos que entre sí, como ya he dicho al principio, no son muy amigos, pero que trabajamos muy bien conjuntamente en el marco de esta organización, pues lograr que el Pacto Verde Europeo tenga una dimensión sur, tenga una dimensión mediterránea. Y nada más por mi parte. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Isidro. Lo creo que ha sido también muy importante hablar no solamente de los retos, pero también de esta necesidad de recentrar un poco los intereses dentro de la Unión Europea. Now that we have concluded the keynote speeches, we will have the opportunity to hear the views of a number of experts. The first to react will be my good friend, Tiago Piticunha. Is the CEO of the Blue Ocean Foundation, and he will bring an Atlantic view on the EU Integrated Maritime Policy. He will be followed by Céline Dubreuil, and Céline will be followed by Roger Albiniana. Céline is the Director of Programs Plan Bleu Regional Activity Center of the Mediterranean Action Plan, UNEP. And Roger is the Director of Mediterranean Regional Policies and Human Development of IEMed. We will start with Tiago. Tiago, welcome. Nice to see you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you very much. I start by thanking the Portuguese Presidency, the Spanish authorities, and the European Institute of the Mediterranean for organizing this initiative on such an auspicious day as the European Maritime Day. And I would probably structure my intervention basically around the interventions that were made before. Picking up of what you have said, Ambassador, on the relationship between Europe and the ocean, to agree that we are talking here of a very special subject for this very special continent. The European Union is indeed the superpower of the ocean in world terms. Mostly in the maritime economy, from shipping to maritime tourism to the biggest market for fish consumption, Europe is indeed such a power. But I think that we need to look into this fact, this reality, with a dynamic perspective looking at the future. And for that, I would probably recall the words of the Portuguese Prime Minister in the summit, the social summit of Oporto at the beginning of this month, where he says that there are those that have been concerned with the moon and that are worried with getting to Mars, but Europeans should be able to have an agenda for the ocean and lead the world on getting to that agenda by 2050. And on this note, I'm very happy to see through the intervention of Isabel Vialon that this new approach for a sustainable blue economy is one in which the blue is positioned as being a contributor to the Green Deal, to the green transition, in which, of course, all of us in Europe are to be engaged in, and especially since the Green Deal was adopted last year. I'm also happy to see that this communication from the European Commission is very much inspired by Mission Starfish of the Mission Board for Healthy Oceans, Seas, Coasts and Inland Waters, as this document seems to be indeed the most progressive, disruptive document that is also online and has been drafted on the relationship between Europe and the ocean. With all these very important points of offshore energy, zero emission vessels, restore marine ecosystems, the new guidelines for aquaculture, the promotion of algae production, these are all very important aspects. And also to comment on what Helena Vieira from the Portuguese Ministry for the Sea, Director General for Maritime Policy, said when very eloquently presented the Portuguese ocean strategy. And there, interesting to see that although very aligned with the European Union and with the other, the IEMed and other initiatives, here is the green that is key for the blue. I listened to Helena saying that the difference between the current ocean strategy for Portugal with its predecessors is that this strategy departs from the green. So nature is where everything needs to start from, and it needs to be protected. So it's very interesting that in a way, in the European Commission, we see that the blue is important for the green, and in the Portuguese strategy that the green is the key for a blue strategy. Moving on to the importance of the Mediterranean, and especially the importance of bringing our EU Mediterranean neighbors on board, very rich interventions also from Jaime del Olmo and Ignacio Gandarias, especially when we learn about the 6 priorities of Algiers for cooperation within the IEMed initiative, and the fact that this initiative, which was inaugurated in 2015, is indeed alive and developing and being able to create cooperation and collective intelligence between all the countries of the Mediterranean. Very auspicious to learn about this green shipping technical working group, as well as a possible future working group of sustainable aquaculture. Just 2 or 3 notes very quick as well on the more sectoral vision and intervention of Ignacio Gandarias, to say that important to see that this sustainability factor is present within the promotion of fisheries and aquaculture, especially with the reference to the importance of marine protected areas, for sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, the role of sea users, fishers and aquacultures in cleaning up coastal waters, or of course, the critical challenge of fighting IU fishing, which is still an issue in the Mediterranean Sea Basin. And finally, as well, to welcome the framework presented by Isidro Gonzalez of what is at stake at this moment in relation to climate change in the Mediterranean Basin and the priorities of the southern neighbors of the Mediterranean. And of course, the issue of jobs and jobs lost due to the pandemics, the issue of the reduction of tourism in the Med Basin, and also the challenges, of course, of pollution, plastic pollution included. And so to finish by saying it is to be welcomed such a 2030 agenda for a green Mediterranean. This is what I wanted to say, trying to stay within my time. Thank you very much, Ambassador, again, for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Tiago. You were just perfect. Now we will move to Céline.
Thank you, Mr. the Ambassador, and thank you to the organizer for inviting me to attend this important event. I also would like to thank the previous speaker for their very interesting presentation. All previous speakers highlighted that today, more than ever, blue economy sectors are important engines for the Mediterranean region's economy, with enormous potential for innovation and sustainable and inclusive prosperity. And the blue economy is a major work pillar of Plan Bleu, and more generally of the UNEP-MAP program of work. The UNEP-MAP Barcelona Convention system is working to ensure that the crucial contribution of the Mediterranean Sea and coast to food, water, and energy provision must not come at the expense of marine and coastal ecosystems. Remember that the Mediterranean was the first regional sea to acquire a legal instrument on coastal management, the ICZM protocol, within the framework of the Barcelona Convention. And the conceptual framework on MSP supports the implementation of ICZM in the marine part of coastal zones, and specifically for planning and managing maritime human activities in line with the ecosystem approach and the integrated monitoring and assessment program roadmap. The MSSD, the Mediterranean Strategy for Sustainable Development, also includes an objective on sustainability in the blue economy and has led to the Sustainable Consumption and Production Regional Action Plan. Again, during the COP21 of the Barcelona Convention, the different contracting parties included commitments related to the blue economy and also especially about the marine renewable energy. So a significant part of Plan Bleu activities on blue economy are carried out within the framework of the Mediterranean Blue Growth Community, which is an horizontal IEMed project launched in 2016. This community of 14 projects advocate a new approach for a sustainable blue economy with a specific focus on innovation. How through the capitalization and transferring of outputs produced by our community of projects dealing with blue economy issues in the Med region. As an example, several tools like the Blue Deal Labs, the GIS web platform aim to promote the development of marine renewable energies in the Med region. Several key subtopics have been highlighted by the previous speaker. I have in mind the digital transition. We think in Plan Bleu that some activities definitely should be carried out on this topic, because digital transformation has a great potential for boosting blue economy sectors such as maritime transport, aquaculture, or tourism, and is key for maintaining international competitiveness. And other issues like circular economy in aquaculture has been raised, and we are working also on it. So I would like to take this opportunity to highlight two initiatives which are currently carried out by Plan Bleu. The first one is the development of guidelines on sustainable cruise and yachting in the Med region in the framework of the Blue Growth project in partnership with two other Interreg Med communities, the Sustainable Tourism Community and the Mediterranean Biodiversity Protection Community. Based on outputs produced by these specific projects from 3 Interreg Med communities, the guidelines will also rely on the work done through the project BlueBoats Med, a startup action funded by the BlueMed initiative. And these guidelines will provide the Mediterranean decision makers and stakeholders with an evidence-based sustainability roadmap to harness the opportunities of both sectors, cruise and recreational boating, while mitigating their adverse impacts on marine and coastal ecosystems, associated biodiversity, climate, air quality, and local community. This is a participatory process which has been adopted to develop these guidelines, and a working group of about 60 stakeholders has been set up by Plan Bleu. Just to mention also that some members and experts from WestMed are part also of this working group, and we are jointly working with some WestMed representative to develop these guidelines. This is the same for the second initiative I would like to tell you. It's about the development of a roadmap for the sustainable development of the aquaculture sector in the Mediterranean. Plan Bleu was commissioned to elaborate this roadmap in the framework of the UNEP-MAP Program of Work 2020 and 2021, in partnership with 2 Interreg Med community of projects, again, the Blue Growth community and the Mediterranean Biodiversity Protection community. This is, again, a participatory process. We have a working group of about 80 members, and we have already organized 2 webinars in collaboration with WestMed, with GFCM, and also IUCN Med, among others. And this roadmap will be focusing on 2030 as a long-term horizon, with a midterm assessment in 2025 in line with international target. This roadmap and these guidelines I mentioned previously should be finalized at the end of June, and then some capitalization event and workshop will be organized before the end of this year to present and to disseminate these 2 key documents. We also planned in a second phase regarding the aquaculture activity to develop, in collaboration with the WestMed and the SIAM from Zaragoza, some pilot project to implement some innovation we identified in southern Med countries to implement some innovative approaches like the ASA or the MT, the Integrated Multi-Trophic Aquaculture. To end my intervention, because I know that we don't have so much time, I would like maybe to raise again some key recommendations which have been already mentioned by some previous speaker. I think it's a key to exploit synergies amongst blue economy sectors and to promote establishment of permanent clusters as strategic assets for sustainable blue growth in the Mediterranean. The second recommendation would be to strengthen and enhance cooperation among all Mediterranean countries, EU and non-EU, to ensure the data sharing, the knowledge exchange, the technology transfer, industrial cooperation, but also the mobility of experts and professionals with a shared environmental sustainability responsibility. The third recommendation will be to achieve harmonization of national legislation, rules, and procedures to ensure exchanges of data and technology and easier mobility of people and products. And at last, it's really important to ensure rational use of funds and durable financial instruments to support all stages of blue economic development, from research and development to market, preventing loss of accumulated knowledge, and prioritizing environmentally sustainable solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Céline. Thank you very much. You had a fantastic background combining blue and green. Now, Roger will finish this panel of experts. He's the Director of Mediterranean Regional Policies of this House, so he's playing on home ground. You have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. And I am currently being strongly pressured to be very, very short. So I promise that I will be very short, but I will relieve my mask. Well, first of all, I'd like to praise the Portuguese Presidency of the Council of the European Union for taking the initiative to promote and organize this event. Despite Portugal is a very Atlantic country, and it's an Atlantic country by nature, Portugal has always played a very meaningful and decisive role in Euro-Mediterranean cooperation dynamics. I would also like to congratulate all the speakers that have preceded me. Specifically, I have only 3 ideas to leave here. The first one, the governance of the integrated maritime policy in the Mediterranean region has progressed quite considerably with a number of Isidro was mentioning the UFM ministerial meetings on sustainable blue economy, which have already met twice and which allow policy dialogue at the ministerial level. Yet I believe that the challenge to coordinate basically and to establish synergies, as Céline was mentioning, still remain. There are umbrella policy frameworks. It was mentioned the global umbrella, which is the UN 2030 agenda, regional reference documents like the Barcelona Convention of 1975. We have a number of policy dialogue frameworks like the ministerial meetings at the level of the UFM, at the level of the 5+5 dialogue. There are multi-stakeholders frameworks like the UFM Blue Economy Working Group, like the Mediterranean Blue Economy Stakeholders Platform. Then there are sub-regional initiatives like the WestMed initiative for the Western Mediterranean, like the EU strategy for the Adriatic and Ionian region. Then we also have the research and innovation initiative like BlueMed. And on top of that, alongside, there are an array of EU programs, EU funds, also several projects co-funded by various EU instruments such as the Horizon 2020, the EMP, the ERDF, the Connecting Europe facility, all of that. And within such a broad landscape, it needs to be coordinated and streamlined. Avoid duplication if it happens in order to circumvent potential inefficiencies and even waste of public resources. A second idea is that while blue growth is probably the cross-cutting policy that contributes the most to economic development within an integrated maritime policy, in the Mediterranean region, it is coastal tourism, maritime transport, and fisheries and aquaculture within this blue economy, the activities that generate more gross value added and jobs to the economy. Therefore, the efforts in turning the blue economy into a path of sustainable development that can also spur job growth need to be addressed into these 3 sectors primarily, without excluding other important sectors like offshore renewable energy and blue biotechnology, among others, and which are obviously strategical. And finally, last year, the IEMed prepared a report for the EU Committee of the Regions on the contribution of local and regional authorities to the development of the blue economy in the Mediterranean. It is no surprise if I recall that in the southern Mediterranean countries, where the level of centralization of public administrations is very high, even if decentralization efforts are underway in countries like Morocco and Tunisia, the role that local and regional authorities can play in boosting blue economy is very limited. And this is a contradiction because local and regional authorities are closer to the territories and to the citizens, and therefore to their needs. National authorities in these countries are often responsible for policy design and implementation, leaving no space to local and regional authorities. I'm also glad, and with that I finish, to know and to learn that within the initiative of the WestMed, local and regional authorities and the dimension of the local and regional authorities has been taken into account since its very first inception. So I hope that the WestMed initiative can serve as an example, as a role model for the southern Mediterranean countries to better involve local and regional authorities in all what has to do with blue economy. Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Roger.
I kept it short, right?
Roger, thank you so much. I think you did it wonderfully. And before giving the floor to Josep and Maria Ángeles, she's the head of the European Commission representation in Spain, for their concluding remarks. Allow me once again to thank all our keynote speakers and experts for their interventions. I think they were very valuable. And if I had to summarize in 2 sentences what was said here this afternoon, the first one would be, there is no green without blue. And the second one would be, but we have to start on green in order to preserve the blue. Josep.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Ambassador. I will go through the presentation of María Ángeles Benítez Salas, the head of the European Commission representation in Spain, who will close who will make the closing remarks. So, María Ángeles, you have the floor. Tienes la palabra.
Yes, muito obrigada. First of all, let me thank all the organizers, in particular Ambassador of Portugal, not only, and congratulate all the speakers for this very, very inspiring event. I have been listening very carefully, and I tell you, it has been really a source of inspiration for their activities in this very important field. I'm not surprised at all that this takes place under Portuguese Presidency, as it was the case with the communication in 2007 about the maritime policy, because of this marine vocation of Portugal through the story. And now in the 80s, Roger has also underlined this vocation, not only Atlantic, but also the role of Portugal in this Euro-Mediterranean dynamics, where Spain is joining this vocation and this dynamic. So it has been a great source of inspiration. Let me say just very, very shortly, I promise also, because we are running short of time, we have already passed the time that we had foreseen for the seminar, but what I have listened, what I retain, what are the main takeaways that I take from this seminar. There is a figure, I'm not very keen on mentioning figures, but there is one that has not been mentioned, and it is the cost of inaction if we do nothing for the ocean. And that could be, according to our estimations, 350 billion euros per year. So this also shows the urgency of acting in favor of our ocean. In fact, it is all about protecting for better exploiting, and this is what we are seeking with that. Many interventions, you have mentioned all the sectors that are concerned: fisheries, transport, tourism, everything. I'm not repeating that, but this also shows, in my view, and underlined and confirmed that we were right when adopting this maritime policy, because it is a holistic policy. It wants to be a framework to better coordinate and better ensure the coherence of all the intervention and actions that have an impact on oceans and seas, and also going over any national limits. The ambassador has already anticipated me when he says that no green without blue. In fact, it was also mentioned by our colleague from DG Fish or DG Mari, sorry, from the Commission, and this has also been underlined by by Tiago Pita, if I'm not mistaken. This connection and this again a holistic concept of sustainability affecting also our seas and our oceans. We believe also that the pandemic has to be an accelerator of the transition and not a break on it. We have the opportunity to redress and to reconstruct, and this is so the objective of the funds. And these questions have to feature in all this plan. A point that has been underlined several times is the importance of cooperation of coastal states, union states, third countries. IEMed del Olmo also has underlined this, when he was describing the WestMed initiative, the dialogue with third countries, and now lately one of the commentators has added to that the role of local and regional authorities. So all this coordination and cooperation, Celine also mentioned the importance of synergies, and synergy is extremely important. I congratulate also our colleagues from Portugal, the ambassador, because of the ambition of your strategy and your plan. I have noted 34 targets for 2030. An action plan with 184 actions with monitoring indicators, targets, etc. So a way of measuring progress. This is also really very important and very impressive, of course. I like particularly also when Elena underlined and described the confluence of objectives between the Atlantic approach and the Mediterranean approach and plans, showing that we have a community of interest, I would say, in the Mediterranean and Atlantic. Importance of South-South cooperation was something that was also showing in the chat. That remind me, one says, and is also valid for these matters that I switched to Spanish, that hay que mirar al sur para no perder el norte. And this is absolutely true also in this topic, if I may say. I just want also to remind that this is one of the many events that are taking place in the Union, and I'm particularly proud that we have been part of the organization of this in Barcelona. This, just to give you the number, we know that 232 events are taking place. So we want really to raise awareness of the importance of the blue economy, because again, and I come back to the beginning, there is no green without blue. And as a citizen and as new head of the Office of the Commission in Spain, I have learned a lot of things. I think this is a fantastic way of raising awareness. And just to finish with, if I switch to Spanish again, allow me to do that, because the poet, I'm sure you know, Rubén Darío, who wrote certain poems saying, necesito el mar porque me enseña, no sé si música o conciencia. Bueno, here we go, aquí vamos con la concienciación de la importancia de los océanos y los mares para la reconstrucción en verde y en azul. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Gracias. Before finishing, I would like to say our heartfelt thanks to IEMed for hosting us and for making this conference possible. And if we move to Portuguese time, we are still ahead of schedule. So, Josep.
Muchas gracias, embajador. No voy a hacer un resumen o sintetizar las diferentes ponencias que han tenido lugar durante esta tarde, que han sido todas muy interesantes. Yo creo que para finalizar esta larga sesión, creo que es el momento de los agradecimientos. Agradecer sin duda a todos los ponentes sus interesantes y complementarias intervenciones. Agradecer a la embajadora João Mira por haber confiado en nosotros. Sin duda a Ana Coelho, ¿no? Que ha sido el alma mater de este acto y de esta iniciativa. Y también querría agradecer muy particularmente, además de los traductores, al equipo del IEMed, ¿no? Del instituto, ¿no? A Roger, a Antoine, a Matías y a Patti, que han estado muy pendientes de que esto saliese lo mejor posible. Muchísimas gracias de verdad y contar con nosotros para cualquier cosa que sea promover las relaciones en el Mediterráneo y entre ambas orillas del Mediterráneo. Muchísimas gracias.